PhD Flopper is a very fascinating perk. It's extremely popular within the community, yet we have not seen much of it. It was first introduced in Black Ops 1, and it does three things. It makes you completely immune to explosive damage, it makes you immune to fall damage, and if you dolphin dive off a ledge, you will create an explosion when you land. It was a perk that was very prominent in Black Ops 1. Everybody loved it, but we've barely seen it since then. It's a perk that Treyarch has been very stubborn about. They've been very hesitant to bring it back, and there was always this big question mark hanging over the community's head as to why Treyarch wouldn't bring back PhD Flopper. And it went as far as people claiming that Treyarch just hates PhD Flopper. So why is that? Why didn't Treyarch want to bring back PhD Flopper? Jason Blundell, the previous project manager for Zombies, tried to answer this very question a few times in a couple of interviews that he did, but his answer wasn't very convincing. He basically said that we couldn't have PhD Flopper because we didn't have dolphin diving anymore, and I'm not convinced by that answer at all. I don't think it's that simple. And here's what I think. Back in Black Ops 1, when PhD Flopper was almost in every map, we could pack-a-punch our starting pistol, and when upgraded, it would turn into the Mustang and Sally, which were dual-wield pistols that would shoot explosive bullets. So now you had a weapon that could do a lot of damage very quickly, and it didn't slow you down at all, so you could run around with it easily. In addition to that, you had PhD Flopper, which made you completely immune to the splash damage. The combination of Mustang and Sally and PhD Flopper gave you the ability to pretty much get out of any sticky situation with very little to no consequences. Every time you got trapped and cornered by the zombies, all you had to do was spam your Mustang and Sally at the ground until you were free. It was basically a get out of jail free card, and it created this dynamic, this gameplay loop where people would get PhD Flopper, they would get Mustang and Sally, and then they would try to get the Wonder Weapon. And that created two problems. One is that it made the other weapons in the game more meaningless, and two, it just made the game too easy. The fact that you could just spam your Mustang and Sally every time you were in trouble was something that Treyarch saw as game-breaking. It just made it too easy for people to survive close encounters, because they didn't have to rely on their skills to maneuver around the zombies. They could just shoot the ground to save themselves, which practically turned the starting pistol into the ultimate escape weapon. And for as long as I can remember, Treyarch has always had this weird obsession with balance. They always cared way too much about balance. They prioritized it way too often. They never wanted the game to be too easy, they never wanted it to be too hard, and one criticism that I could make about Treyarch is that they sometimes prioritize balance over fun. They sacrifice fun for balance, which is something you shouldn't really do, especially with the game mode as casual as Zombies. So when you look at PhD Flopper from Treyarch's perspective, it's a balancing nightmare. They don't want the game to be too easy, they don't want you to go with the same setup every game, hence why we got a new perk system in Black Ops 4, and they want you to consider all the other weapons in the game when you're getting set up. They have always wanted those three things, and PhD Flopper single-handedly prevents that from happening. And that's why Treyarch has always been so stubborn about bringing it back. It's not because of the dolphin dive. Sure, dolphin diving with PhD Flopper is fun, but it's not something people used very often. They mostly got PhD Flopper because it allowed them to be able to utilize explosive weapons without putting themselves at risk, and that's why PhD Flopper was AWOL for a long time. After Black Ops 1, we started to see it less and less. In Black Ops 2, it made a return as a hidden perma-perk in Buried, it was also in Mob of the Dead Grief, and it was in Origins. But the problem was, Origins' starting pistol was the Mauser, and when upgraded, it wouldn't turn into an explosive weapon, but more like an enhanced version of the ray gun. And in Origins, there are barely any ledges to dolphin dive off of, and you didn't really have to worry about fall damage either. So PhD Flopper in Origins just felt like a misplaced perk. It felt like it didn't belong because it couldn't be taken full advantage of. In Black Ops 3, we got the Mustang and Sally back, It wasn't called Mustang and Sally, it was called the Meat Wagon, and the MR6 Pack-a-Punched was called Death and Taxes, but it was the exact same thing, starting pistols pack-a-punched into dual-wield explosive pistols, but we didn't have PhD Flopper in that game. They did give us a classic gobblegum called Danger Closest, which gave you immunity to explosive damage for 3 rounds, but I don't think anybody really used it. It wasn't very popular, and people just wanted PhD Flopper back instead. Even in the Zombies Chronicles maps, they replaced PhD Flopper with Widow's Wine, which I think is a good perk, but people still wanted PhD Flopper. In Infinite Warfare Zombies, we did get PhD Flopper in the form of a perk. It was called Bomb Stoppers, and it basically did the same thing minus the Dolphin Dive. In World War II Zombies, we did not get PhD Flopper, but the starting pistols Pack-a-Punched did not inflict any splash damage despite working the same way as the Mustang and Sally. And in Black Ops 4, we got a version of PhD Flopper called PhD Slider, and initially it only made you gain partial resistance to explosive damage, but about halfway through the game's lifecycle, they updated the perk to give you full immunity to explosive damage, which was one of the best decisions they could make. It also gave you immunity to trap damage while sliding, and with the modifier you could slide into enemies and create a little explosion. And here we are in Black Ops Cold War Zombies. The game is doing fairly well and people seem to like it, but there's a clear lack of fun and exciting perks in this game. And another thing that is very noticeable in this game is that the explosive weapons are actually not bad. And not only that, for the first time in years, the explosive lethal equipment are pretty damn good. I can't remember the last time when the frag grenade was actually a reliable tool at killing zombies. The Semtex and the C4 are even better. The Monkey Bomb can actually kill zombies now. We also have the War Machine, which is very reliable and is pretty good at inflicting damage and crowd control. When it comes to the explosive weapons, we no longer have the Mustang and Sally, which is kind of sad since they were really iconic, but the rest of the explosive weapons are pretty good. The M79 or the China Lake leaves a little to be desired, but the RPG and the Sigma are not bad. Which ultimately begs the question, do we need PhD Flopper in Cold War Zombies? With how good the explosives are in this game, I'm actually very surprised that PhD Flopper is not in this game already. I think they probably had PhD Flopper ready, but they wanted to hold back and release it as a surprise perk later down the line. Because if you look at how the explosives are in this game, you can tell that they've already done the balancing that is required for the release of PhD Flopper. Think about it. There is no Mustang and Sally, so you don't really have a get out of jail free card in that sense, and the explosive weapons that we have now are extremely heavy, so they slow you down quite a bit, so you can't really run around with them feeling safe. And the animation for firing those weapons is quite slow, so you can't spam anymore, and they can't really be used in the same way the Mustang and Sally were used back in the day. So it'll be difficult to use an explosive weapon as a clutch weapon even with PhD, and they don't really do that well against the boss zombies either. So with all that said, do we need PhD Flopper in Cold War Zombies? Yes, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure we're gonna get PhD Flopper at some point. I will be very disappointed if we don't get it, because it's not just that we need it, it's that blowing up a bunch of zombies at the same time is just too satisfying. So PhD Flopper might not be absolutely necessary for your survival, but it's without a doubt one of the most fun perks that Treyarch has ever created, and it's just what we need right now in this game. That is gonna do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments section down below whether you think we need PhD Flopper to come back. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Nighttime Sea.